I think risk is the lifeblood of humanity. I mean, think about agriculture, and the idea of being a farmer is ridiculous, right? Like it's really makes no sense.
That's what the accountants say.
It makes no sense to be a farmer unless you appreciate and understand risk.
The Growing the Future podcast is brought to you by Aberhart Ag Solutions. Join us as we talk to top entrepreneurs in the agricultural space about their methods of obtaining success in their endeavors. And now, your host, Dan Aberhart.
Craig Johnson, the tornado hunter.
Yeah, that's what they say.
How does one get to the stage in life where you actually attain like a title like that? The tornado hunter.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation where my guidance counselor from high school owes me a huge apology, eh?
If we could only all have stories like that. You owe me.
Yeah.
Look what I am now.
I got into the weather thing when I moved to Saskatchewan. I moved here from Ontario.
Okay. It's okay. We forgive you.
Yeah, I moved to the prairies from Ontario. I thought I was going to be here for a year. It's a classic story.
Sucked you in.
Met a woman.
Love.
Right.
Oh, that's
and then,
beautiful.
Yeah, I got into the photography thing at a time when I guess I was an early adopter of a new technology when digital was brand new, and ended up creating a life and family and kids and business and everything out on the prairies, and the weather thing, was never an intended, I didn't go into it with intention to turn this into a business or anything. It was really a hobby, and then series of serendipitous kind of things happened, and all of a sudden, here I am. It's really weird, actually.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
How does your family feel about you driving into tornadoes? What kind of conversations you have before you go driving into tornadoes?
Well, listen, I got 4 kids. 2 boys, 2 girls. I think between the 4 of them, they've maybe watched 2 episodes of our show.
Right.
Like it's just I'm dad, and that's the thing I do. And
right.
When there's a storm in Regina, I'll get a text from my daughter saying, like, do I need to know anything? And
is there anything I should know?
So I drive this big goofy orange storm chasing truck, and I've had my kids in the vehicle, driving around the city, and if they see somebody they know, they kind of slide down in the chair. They don't.
How old are they?
18, 17, 15, and 12.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Good for you.
Well, is it really good for me?
I don't know. I mean, besides bringing the beauty of storms and illuminating the beauty of risk to farmers, I think having kids would be a close second.
Yeah, I mean that's the you said the word risk, and that's for me that is that's my kind of life lesson for my kids. We all. Anybody who's got children, there's sort of like certain things that you want to impart onto them, that you want them to take with them into being adults and stuff. And, risk has a pretty negative, like the word risk has a negative connotation with a lot of people, right? Oh, that's risky. But I think risk is the lifeblood of humanity. I mean, think about agriculture, and, the idea of being a farmer is ridiculous, right? Like it's really makes no sense.
That's what the accountants say.
It makes no sense to be a farmer unless you appreciate and understand risk, because that's what farming is all about. You put a crop in the ground, there's so many factors that are out of your control. Whether it's weather, whether it's market forces, pricing, all these things. But without that risk, you don't get that reward at the other end. And risk, when it comes to being a storm chaser, when I talk about risk, people think I'm talking about risk in my life. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, the idea of starting a business, changing an occupation, falling in love, adopting new technology, trying a new crop, and all these things. The world doesn't change unless people take risk, period. That's like the only way things change, is when people take risks. And I want my kids to be risk takers.
Good for you. Oh, so many questions, but I'm thinking about how you're talking about risk, and I'm thinking it's all relative. I mean, what's a risk to me might not be a risk to somebody else, and vice versa, but I think that the important thing is to take those risks, because then we're ready for the next risk, right? We're always ready for a bigger risk, like ready to handle bigger problems. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, I love the analogy of being an entrepreneur. I love using farming as that example, because literally every decision you make in agriculture is a risk, right? So at this trade show, there's a guy doing a demonstration on drone technology. There's a guy doing a demonstration on an autonomous robot farm system. There's you're looking at 50 new varieties of seeds that are resistant to. Who would have believed that if you had had this conversation 30 years ago? And that's the thing that I think is so amazing. My kids have grown up in the city. I got city kids.
Mm-hmm. Where is the city?
Regina.
Regina,
yeah.
Okay.
So if you took the average person out on the street who has nothing to do with agriculture, and you said, tell me about farming. They're going to tell you about ducks and cows and chickens and grain, wheat fields, and the red barn. The average person's not going to talk to you about marketing. The average person's not going to talk to you about, are you a technology company? They're not going to talk to you about being an investment company. But modern farming is all of those things, right? You're managing risk. That's what you're doing. The whole thing is risk, and that's the entrepreneurial spirit. That's by definition what it is. So I don't think there's any better example than being a farmer.
Back up the truck a little bit and go to the why of risk. Why is it that we crave risk and we chase risk? You on the most visceral levels, like riding right into the storm.
Yeah,
Why? Why do we do that?
Certainly in my situation, there's a, whether you want to call it a passion or an adrenaline thing or an excitement or a challenge. Definitely challenge is a big part of it. When you think about it this way, I drive from Saskatchewan to Texas. I've got a 16-hour window. I get there and I'm able to witness a tornado that lasts 10 minutes in some guy's field somewhere. There's a challenge associated with that. And it's almost an addiction at this point, right? Like just sort of pushing yourself to the next one. But I think that risk at its base level, risk is about making change. Just making things better. You got kids?
Absolutely.
How many kids do you have?
I got 4 kids and I had sex
Okay.
3 times, so it's complicated.
So, yeah, mine's a little complicated too.
Hey, I admire the complicated
Yeah.
status on Facebook.
Yeah, it's complicated. With my children, I had a pretty good life growing up. I have a pretty good life today. But what do I want for my children?
Yeah.
I want it to be better for them, right? And if you think about, as I pulled into Olds here, there's a little sign on the lamp post that says 1905 to 2005. So in 1905, City of Olds was incorporated, and and likely there was a bunch of farmers here that had a hard time speaking the language, who put some seeds in the ground, and their hope was that they were building a better future for their kid and the next generation and the next generation. And I think in Canadian agriculture right now, you're seeing that. I know when I moved to the prairies in 1995, nobody wanted their kids to go into farming.
Right.
Right?
I graduated in 93, man. I
And
was like,
yeah, so in 93,
yeah.
it was like, do I want to take over the farm? Hell no. Why? Why? Because A, I don't think I can make any money doing it. B, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things that I can't control. But here we are, you know, 20 whatever. God, that's scary that, yeah. But here we are almost 27, 26 years later.
Yeah.
And look at the landscape of agriculture.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. This is a business. This is like the number of technology companies that are born directly from farmers' experience, right? These aren't technology companies that it's somebody from somewhere else that's coming in. This is a guy who saw a problem on his farm
Right.
and went, I know there's a solution to this. I'm going to use this new technology. I'm going to create a solution. I'm going to turn that into a business. Those are amazing things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes me think Elon Musk had a quote something to the effect of, you know, you get compensated to the degree by which you solve difficult problems.
Right.
What problems in the universe are you solving? What do you do?
That's a really, really good question. I honestly don't think of myself as a problem solver, but I do think what I provide or share are stories, and storytelling is incredibly powerful tool. I believe that as a photographer, I believe that photography is our generation's medium of storytelling. People are watching this right now. They're looking at images. We see images, whether it's on the news, whether it's sports, but they generate memories for us. Every one of us has had the experience where, it's granddad's funeral, and we're in the basement with grandma, and we're going through that old photo album, and those photos, they don't just display those events. They actually trigger our memories. Our memories, I believe, are wrapped around those images, right? There's a lot of events in my life that I've probably forgotten because I don't have any imagery of it. But the ones that I have images of, those are the ones that stick with me. And so maybe that's a problem I'm solving for people. I'm creating images.
We know that you're creating tremendous value because, I've seen you speak. I missed you this morning, unfortunately. But I've seen you speak, and it's imagery, stories, the emotional side of it. When you're sitting in Texas after driving 16 hours, you're looking at a 10-minute event that eclipses everything that on an everyday scale you're sort of accustomed to.
Yep.
Like it's a whole different dimension. It's a different reality.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there looking at a monster storm that could, wreak havoc or take your life or change the circumstances of the whole entire community in minutes.
Seconds.
Seconds. What is that saying to you, about the universe?
Yeah, that's a pretty deep question, but
it's a deep show.
Yeah, it is a deep question, but it's actually a question I get quite a bit. From a philosophy standpoint, I would say there's things we can control, there's things we can't control. Yeah. I know when. I don't know. I guess I'm maybe a bit of a skeptic here, but I know in Alberta, cloud seeding's a big thing. Okay.
Not familiar.
They seed the clouds with the silver nitrate or whatever to prevent the.
I knew of that concept, but I didn't know they actually do that.
If it's not silver nitrate, I have
no idea. Is it like chemtrails? Is some sort of conspiracy?
No. But what it is is so if big hail causes a problem,
Right.
So if we can make it hail before they get too big,
That's interesting. I
so
didn't know you
they
did
seed
that.
the clouds with the.
Cool.
Anyway, I don't believe it. That it's a thing. I don't see how we can control that. But engineering weather is. I mean, I'm just skeptical. I don't think it's something we're going to be able to do. And so when you see the power of that storm, and listen, I'm not even talking on an actual physical level, the power, but when I see a group of people and I sit down and I show them imagery, and I can see people's reaction to that. When I take a tour group, and by the way, people actually spend money to go on a tour where they sit in a pickup truck and eat gas station food for a week. It happens. Anyway.
Sounds like my life.
but I'll take these people and they're coming from Asia, they're coming from Europe, they're coming from places where they don't experience those kind of storms.
Oh, really? Yeah, I never thought of
Yeah,
that.
and
That's
to
interesting.
actually see.
So we get more of those inland, maybe. That's the thing.
Yeah, and not only that, it's
Yeah.
a different, visually a different storm
Yeah.
here than you see anywhere else on Earth.
Interesting. Land of living skies.
Well, the thing is that here I can see a storm developing literally 200 kilometers away. You go down to places like Alabama, Mississippi, you don't see them from
Why?
200.
Why?
Trees.
No.
Trees are 100 feet tall. It's
Yeah.
jungle.
Right.
People who live in big cities, they don't see
Right.
it the same way. And there is something, like I hate to use this word, but there is something like spiritual. There's
Absolutely. Of course.
something inside you. And remember, I'm not a prairie guy originally.
Right.
So like I wasn't born into that. I didn't see that since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I came into it in my 20s, and I went, holy crap.
See, we probably just see it all the time, don't think anything of it. Really.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I believe that's part of it.
How do you feel about the weather as a whole?
Oh,
What about
Oh.
climate change?
So-
I mean, whether you want to get political or just
So, okay.
geographical or...
yeah, okay. So if I'm doing an interview with CBC,
Yeah.
when I give the answer I'm about to give you, the
Yeah.
conversation ends very quickly.
Okay. Cut!
And in other news,
Oh,
and they move on.
CBC?
And it's
And
not, there's, certainly there's, okay, so I think it would be foolhardy to think that we're not doing damage to the earth
Right.
in a lot of situations.
We're definitely having an impact on it.
We're having an impact. Is the impact the way it's portrayed on this side of the aisle, this side of the aisle? Probably not either. It's probably somewhere in between. But all of that aside, I'm not a climate scientist, so it's above my pay grade to say the Earth is going to hell in a handcart. I don't know.
10 years, in 10 years.
Yeah, in 10 years.
I love how they put a date on it. It's like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
such a
And
watch.
so that,
It's like Y2K.
yeah, so that's all. Yeah, so that's all fine and dandy. But the question is weather changing? And I hear people say all the time, "Oh my God, these storms! Like it's getting really bad now.
Right.
What are we gonna do about these storms?"
Yeah.
Well, I think if you talk to your grandfather,
Yeah.
I think you talk to your grandfather back in the 40s and 50s, and they tell you, "Oh, there were some bad storms then too."
Yeah.
And there's going to be some bad storms in a few years from now. We have very short-term memories when it comes to weather. We just went through a
Right.
week of
That's a good
plus
point.
15 days in August. People are like, "Oh my God, I can't remember it ever being like, whoa."
And isn't it getting shorter with just all the information? And
Yeah,
just
like
bombardment?
our
you
news
know?
cycle is so
Yeah,
short. We
that's a
forget
good
what
point.
happened,
Yeah.
a month ago.
Yeah.
So listen,
I think that's recency bias, they call that.
that sounds
recency
about
bias.
right. Yeah. In 2011, we had a year which we saw the most tornadoes ever recorded in 2011.
Okay.
Since 2011, 7 of those years since 2011, 2019 being the exception, were in the top 10 slowest tornado years ever recorded.
Oh, business is down. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
to hear
this
about
is
that, Craig.
it's the tornado hunter
Collecting bottles
recession.
at this point.
Yeah,
Recession.
it is.
Got a tornado recession.
Yeah, it's the tornado.
I didn't see a tweet
it's
about
the,
that.
It's the oh yeah. Listen, hurricanes. On average, every decade,
Yeah.
the United States sees landfall of about a dozen major hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since 2005, we've had 3. So, is there evidence that the world's going to hell in a handcart? Maybe, but not when it comes to severe weather. And so
Isn't that the threat?
well,
One
and
of
that,
the major threats
but
of
my
climate change?
point is, and this is where I get shut down.
So
by
they don't
the-
want to hear that doesn't fit the narrative?
Exactly. So what I'm saying is, maybe the world is going to hell in a handcart, but does that mean the storms are getting worse? Maybe it means that 50 years from now, the conditions don't exist for tornadoes and severe thunderstorms in the prairies.
Yeah.
This idea that just because there's evidence of climate change, does that mean that means every storm's going to be Armageddon? Maybe it means we don't get storms anymore.
I hope we're worried about storms on Mars in 50 years. Or Titan.
Yeah, but you're right though. I mean, I think the fear is a way you control people. I'm not. I don't identify on one side of the aisle or the other on a lot of things.
Are you a political guy? Because I know you're talking about what you ran into some controversy on Twitter.
I'm not really a political guy. But
How did you get down on the weeds into the dumpster fire on Twitter there?
I'm probably, well, you should never drink and tweet. That is
Don't drink and tweet.
Don't drink and
Can
tweet.
I get that sticker?
Yeah, you know what?
That's awesome.
I'm gonna come up with
Okay,
those.
I think so.
Don't
Yeah.
drink and tweet. But also, I mean,
That's a golden rule.
listen, I'm reasonably opinionated, and
That's
so
why people want to hear from you too, though. It's the age of opinions.
right. The only problem is that when I'm 100% right and other people are wrong,
Shitty.
right?
For them.
Yeah, it's not good. Doesn't go well.
I get it.
So my concern in the world right now, since we're going there, okay. So
Just to clarify.
Yeah, just to
it all,
clarify
looking
what my
back on
concern
it,
in
I
the
mean, the
world
problem
is.
was that I was right and everybody else was wrong. The entire Twitter sphere was wrong. Oh, I love it.
But my concern in the world is that I think that the whole conversation is too polarized.
Oh,
So
incredible.
So like when it comes to weather, in the climate discussion, man, I got to tell you, my opinion on that doesn't jive well with a lot of my meteorology types.
Yeah. Because you're probably sort of with hashtag Western Canadian Ag on the whole.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, listen, I got a daughter who is vegan, and God bless her. I'm so proud of her because she has conviction, right?
Yeah.
She cares about something, and that's wonderful. But I've been around this my whole life. I know what agriculture is all about. It's not going anywhere. I'm a huge, I hope it comes across. I'm a huge supporter of ag, right?
Well, and I was going to ask you, there's a huge connection between what you do and ag and.
Yeah, I mean, and I grew up, my mom, at just like Olds College, my mom spent her career teaching. She's a protein scientist. She spent her career at an agricultural college. That's where I had my summer jobs. I mean, I've been around it my whole life. But there's this political thing lately that says, if you're driving a truck, then you're a conservative. You have this view of the world, and if you're from the city, boy oh boy, you're a liberal, and you're on the other side of the thing. Oh, hold on a second.
Right.
I mean, I don't buy into that, and so I've got into a little trouble on Twitter because I'm pretty opinionated about what's happening in the States, and at the same time, I'm pretty opinionated about what's happening here with our Prime Minister. There are there's some serious shortcumings on both sides.
Okay, so Trudeau 2019 and Trump 2020.
Yeah, see, those are my stickers. Those are my 2 stickers.
Yeah, so you want Trudeau gone and you want Trump in, or you want?
I want both of them gone.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think there's a, just because I voted for Brad Wall and the SAS party, and card-carrying member of the Progressive Conservatives when I was younger, doesn't mean I'm going to vote for them today.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean that I'm going to vote that way the next time around. Doesn't mean I'm not going to. But I think this idea that because that's your party, that there's a belief structure that you have.
Right.
What I find sad, the part that upsets me and where I've got into trouble, is on the U.S. side of the border.
Yeah.
And I identify with rural Canada. I identify with conservative politics across the board, for the most part.
Absolutely.
But I don't identify with what's happening south of the border.
Is that what's happening though, or is that again back to when the CBC's cutting you off from making your point because they don't want the narrative, it doesn't fit their sponsors or their advertising or their clickbait? I mean, is it what's happening? Or is that such a small, I mean, in a country of 300 million, it's such a small, I mean,
I don't.
you could cherry pick any narrative of it at any given situation.
Yeah, I really don't believe that, and here's why.
Like 98% of the people are just good, kind, hardworking Americans.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing.
Extremists.
No, and that's the thing.
They're picking the extremists. It looks like there's a lot more than there is. Just
Oh no,
like
I'm not.
extreme weather.
I'm only talking about at the top. I'm only talking the Trump thing.
Okay.
So I don't care whether you're a farmer, a hunter. I don't care whether you're a surfer in California or whatever.
Right.
You hit the nail on the head. I don't think I've ever met an American I didn't enjoy.
Exactly.
Like honestly,
Then you watch the news and it's
we
like,
might have a disagreement on a policy or a way to solve the world's problems, but you welcome me into your home, cooking me a steak. We're having like good people across the board. What I have a problem with is what's happening politically in the States.
if you watch CNN or Fox, you're conversely, in different ways, afraid of Americans, like the David Bowie song. You're like,
I mean, I am, but I'm certainly at this point more afraid of the Fox, and that's just because, I think there's a movie, the Idiocracy, and I look at the policy decisions that, and honestly, it's a personality thing too. I can't identify with anything that's happening on the right side of the aisle in the States at this point. Canada's a different situation. Our form of conservatism here would be considered democratic. The Dems, the left in the States, like it is a
right. We can't get nearly as far right. And don't have a hope in hell.
No.
But if you separated Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta
from the rest of the country,
I don't know what BC would do, so I'm not sure I care.
I actually think you're wrong. I've lived in Nova Scotia, lived in Ontario, I've lived in BC, and I've lived in Saskatchewan. I don't think this is an east-west thing, and I've said this since the day I moved to Saskatchewan.
Really?
It's not an east-west thing.
We feel like that.
No, you know what it is?
We feel like that.
Yeah, but if you go to rural Nova Scotia,
hey.
and if you go to rural Nova Scotia, they feel the exact same way as the guy in rural Alberta.
One of my best friends from Nova Scotia, I'm going to see him as strategic coach in Toronto on Friday, and I know that we have the same conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing if you go to a fishing community in Newfoundland, if you go to a rural farm community in southern Ontario, the conversation is exactly the same. But in Western Canada, we frame that as an east versus west.
We do.
But I can tell you it's a rural versus urban. It's a this lifestyle versus this lifestyle much more than it is an east versus west.
When I talked to Scott Moe, I told him that I was concerned for
for the health of my business, given, you know, bullish, bearish, you know, sentiment of producers, if Trudeau got in, or again, in October, November,
Yeah.
it almost felt
I'm with you on that.
maybe the opportunities if the Trudeau gets in again, then it's a different conversation about, I mean, not necessarily separatism.
Right.
Because I just don't know that any of us really want that, but it is a different conversation about equalization.
So
If we can't do business to support the country, then
here's I've said this for a long time, and I truly believe this. In Canada, our politics, and I think it's due to the way Parliament runs, the party politics of Parliament, right? So things are voted on party lines, and you know it's very hard to get anything actually accomplished.
this is the thing.
Okay, so
Right.
what ends up happening in Canadian politics on a federal level is that you get everybody kind of squeezing into the middle here, and you get some slightly left stuff, and I mean I think Trudeau, it's more of a personality issue more so than policy. Personally, I think that you know, conservative side,
They'll go to the middle when they get elected.
yeah, and you
have to.
don't really see in Canada these wild swings in policy
No.
from one government to the next. We just don't. On the U.S. side, though, you do see these wild swings. I mean, like they're having discussions about like this group saying like everybody should have an abortion. This group saying like this should never happen. This should be illegal. These guys are saying like nobody should ever be put to death. These guys are saying like anybody who commits a crime should be going to the chair. So, but they have these wild. So we don't see that in Canada.
I think that's pretty functional here in Canada because I think
so,
a lot
too.
of producers, talk to a lot of good producers. I think the successful producers aren't changing a whole lot in 1 year. They're kind of looking at what they've done and they're making little 5% changes on each thing. And you know, politically that's very functional. Nobody can come in and sort of make such wild changes. I mean, it's not working too badly. And I wonder a little bit long term about cyclically, like the lifespan of democracy. And I worry a little bit, getting a little bit rotten at the core. You know?
I've read and I think there's some evidence to this that we're no longer really in that democracy, right?
Is that the red pill or the blue pill?
No, I don't think it's either. I think it's and when I say that as a democracy, I'm talking about the influence that global organizations, global companies, and the trade deals that exist around the world. This idea that one country, you know, can have all the influence within their borders, those days are gone. If there's democracy, you would need to think of it on a global scale now, because I mean we can say we make some policy decisions about what we're going to do in agriculture, but if Chile has an earthquake and that affects the price of blank, if the Russians have a bad harvest year or a great harvest year, or the price of oil goes up. I mean, all of these things now are such global scale things that we just don't have as much influence on our own structure as I think we used to. That's pretty philosophical, though. We're getting deep now.
I do love it. I was just kind of curious though, but why is it? So you came to Saskatchewan from Ontario, who hopefully will still be part of the country, our country, when we talk next. God bless Ontario, but you know, we're going to have to put a wall up there.
Yeah.
But like, why is it exactly that you're so connected with agriculture? Is because the big wide open spaces and the storms and the risk, everybody relates to that in agriculture? Or why did you get in? Because you speak a lot of agriculture.
Yeah, I mean, I do, and I mean, just again, you know, growing up in that environment, you know, the natural audience for a weather guy is people who care about weather,
Oh, that's a cool thing.
right?
Yeah.
That's the natural audience. Another big audience I have is in the insurance industry,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
right? So
I never thought of
yeah,
that.
there's some real natural,
cool. Yeah.
natural audiences for the discussions around weather. When I moved here, trust me, this was the farthest thing from my mind, and I always tell the joke, and I mean it's a joke, and it always gets a laugh, but it's absolutely true. Is that when I moved here, moved to the prairies from Ontario, I didn't know what a combine was.
Let alone that you should be driving a Lexion
Right?
versus a John Deere.
Yeah. So so I had a because farming is so
Yeah, we just don't get that in agriculture.
yeah, farming is so different in Eastern Ontario, right? You don't have these massive grain farms, and it's dairy, and you've got vegetable growers, and you've got still big business, but smaller on a physical scale, smaller plots of land. Just a little aside here, but so farming communities in Eastern Ontario, if you've ever driven around Ontario, the farming communities, you're driving down this little highway, and it's going like this, and somebody's home, their homestead for that farm is right there on the highway. Like you could swing your golf club and
like
hit their front porch.
I know.
And then you come out to the prairies, and they're like, okay, if you're going down number, County Road 347, turn right and then drive 4 miles to our homestead. It's
My hair used to freeze on the way to the bus, in high school.
Exactly.
It's like
exactly.
it's like it would de-thaw on the bus and be water running up.
Yeah. So so I was, it's different, but still those people live and die and breathe and wake up and check the weather, and you walk into the cafe in whatever town you're from, and it doesn't matter. I don't care whether you're in Newfoundland or whether you're in central BC or whether you're in the prairies. The old Polish dudes are talking about the weather.
The old Polish dude.
That's what they're doing.
It's fun to go and sell some of those communities. It's funny. Yeah. I seen quite a few people when you were signing their books. They were talking to you. They wanted to share
Their
a story.
Yeah.
They wanted you to hear.
Yeah.
Because they know you can relate. So I feel like they were in the audience and they must have had a connection with you, Greg, and wanted to share that with you.
Everybody has a story about weather. Maybe it's a tornado ripped through the yard. Maybe it's, somebody's camper was destroyed at this event, or they had a near miss, a close call in Edmonton in 1987, and everyone has a story, and I think that's part of the draw. I've sort of tapped into that audience. It's a natural audience.
Good work.
Yeah.
When you find yourself in the midst of human loss and suffering, how is that? And have you had a meaningful chance to help? Has that been part of the function and the honor and the
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound, when I say what I'm about to say, I don't want it to sound like, I'm very noble gentleman.
We know you are.
But
we're gonna put you on a horse, much like Putin, like in the media thing.
When I'm like everyone who's listening to this right now, this conversation, everybody's listening to this podcast.
Lots of people are listening.
Right.
It's a huge audience.
You're all 4 million of them. But anybody who's listening has the same reaction as I have when we watch something on the news and we think to ourselves, why are they filming this? Why aren't they helping? Why? I have that same reaction.
Yeah.
But when I get into those situations, I have to tell you that the camera stays in the truck. I mean, I'm like anybody else. I want to have. I leave the camera in the truck. That's an afterthought. The situation where you come across loss of life,
Right.
potential loss of life, injury, even catastrophic property damage.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that means that's a lot.
Yeah.
Especially like for the rural people, they built their lives around that property.
Right, and not just the property, and it's interesting, you know, it's the trees.
Yeah.
I had this conversation earlier today about the shelter belt, right?
Yes.
That's a staple of the prairies,
Yeah.
right? The shelter
Like the
belt.
bones of
Yeah,
the-
your grandfather planted those trees.
Yeah.
It took 80 years for them to get where they're at. There is a sense of loss when those are destroyed, whether it's a tornado or a plow wind or a microburst or just a big storm. There's a sense of loss when you lose the trees. But whenever we're in those situations, I want to be there. I want to tell that story. I want to take pictures. But there's a human element that precedes all of that. Camera stays in the truck. I get a chance. I'm going to meet the person. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to ask them if they're okay if we take pictures. I'm going to, and some times it's not until the next day. We go back. Are you okay if we come back tomorrow and talk with you? And we're going to interview somebody and we're going to, share that story. But just, jumping out of the truck and taking pictures when people are in distress, that's not my jam. Not just from a human standpoint, but from an economic standpoint. Nobody buys that shit. Oh, sorry. Nobody buys that stuff. Nobody buys that.
So yeah, you tapped into something primal, obviously, with what you're delivering.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think primal's a really good word, because whether it's 100 years ago, whether it's today, whether it's 100 years from now, it ain't changing. It's still going to be. There's still going to be bad weather and still going to be storms. People are still going to be fascinated with it, and I'm sure as a kid, every person that's listening, every person that grew up on the prairies as a kid, watched at the window as a lightning storm did its thing.
Yes.
I mean, everyone had
The
that
dog's
experience.
coming in, he's terrified.
Yeah, everyone
You're
had
just
that
wondering,
experience, yeah.
And then there's that moment when you realize this is actually bigger than me.
Yeah.
Like, anybody who's come face to face with a storm, you realize, because most of our lives we're completely in control.
Yeah. Tornadoes don't scare me, and I mean that sincerely. That's not that, and I don't mean
So
that.
what scares you?
I don't mean that as in some sort of brave
When
way.
you back on the horse, shirtless like the
Tornadoes really don't, because I know where they are. I can see them. I know which direction it's moving, and I can avoid it. Lightning terrifies me.
Oh.
Driving terrifies me.
Well, that's good because you're likely to die driving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you put enough miles on, statistically, that's where it's going to happen. And so I can't control what other drivers do. I can't control where lightning happens. The tornado, though, that's a thing that I can look at. I can see it. I can move from.
Interesting.
I can move out of the way.
Yeah.
I can go as close as I want or as far away as I want. I
point.
don't find a fear factor
Yeah.
from the tornado, but standing outside my truck, taking pictures, when there comes a point where the lightning is too close. It's like, I'm out of here, and I feel the same way about driving. I've made a lot of decisions. As I get a little bit older, as my kids grow up a little bit more, I've made driving decisions, or I guess storm chase decisions based on how much driving's involved. Just because I don't want to be
Smart man.
Yeah.
For all the things that we worry about.
Yeah, that's.
We worry
Yeah.
about, with the amount of people killed by terrorism versus car accidents.
It's like terrorism's doesn't even rank. Terrorism doesn't
Around
rank.
here.
Yeah.
You're doing what you love, but is there something, what else in an alternate universe would Greg Johnson be doing?
What would I be doing in an alternate universe?
Besides being like a superhero. Would you be a farmer?
I would be a farmer, actually, but I don't see myself as a grain farmer or a dairy farmer. Dairy farmers are crazy. Dairy farming,
Yeah.
that's way too much
We
work.
had dairy till I was 5.
Oh my
I woke
God.
up as a child in a house absent of adults many times.
Yeah, no, dairy farming is way too labor intensive. But I see myself as a little old man tending to some bees, you know,
Nice.
and having a little plot of land and little vegetable stand on the
That's
side of the
cool.
road, you know, that kind of thing. Absolutely.
You'll get there.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
How do you like the celebrity? Be real.
You know,
It's your work, but
yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of positives that come with that. You know, and from an ego standpoint, sure. I mean, there's great. It's awesome, wonderful feeling. From a standpoint of my voice, it's actually been so. There's been times it's been really negative, right? Because you know, I hear why don't you stick to storm chasing?
yeah,
You know, give me the weather report. Don't tell me what you think
that
about
hurts,
anything. Well, it kind of pisses me off. You know, like, you know, if a reality TV star can be the president of the United States, I feel like my opinion on a matter should be taken as well, I guess. But yeah, no, I mean,
And you do. It is almost like a burden to have a voice as a celebrity.
well, but let's be real clear.
Yeah.
You got your A-list celebrities.
Yeah.
You got your B-list celebrities.
Yeah.
You got your C's and D's.
Okay.
I'm probably in that E level
I
or
get
F
it. I
level
get it.
celebrity.
It's-
So I mean, it's not this burden
Yeah.
that
No.
my kids don't like it when, you know, we'll be traveling. Last year we flew down to Florida, and this guy in the airport in Florida, oh, I recognize this guy, and he wants pictures. And of course, my kids are embarrassed to high heaven on that kind of stuff. But
Really?
The show's got a lot of traction in the
Yeah.
States
Yeah.
On Netflix,
Yeah.
and so way more
Okay,
recognition.
wait a minute. You're on Netflix?
Yeah, in
How
the
can I miss
States.
this?
It's
In the
not.
States?
It's not in Canada.
Oh. I
Yeah. So way more recognition.
Okay, well, we just broke into the American market.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, way more recognition when we
Cool.
go down south than
Love it.
when we're on Canadian side of the border.
So you got the coffee table book, you got the tour, you got the show.
Yeah.
What's the legacy of the Tornado Hunter?
My kids, my children. That's literally it. You know, I got one son who is just won the National Robotics Championship in Skills Canada, and I got another who's a musician, and I've got they're all great
That's
in their own way,
Yeah.
and they're all going to forge their own path. My hope is that they, you know, do their little slice of changing the world, just like you're doing, just like these people are doing out here. Nobody
Absolutely.
comes to an event like this
Yes.
without the intention of doing something really cool, without the intention of making their operation better, without making their, making the world a better place. And so if my kids are doing that, then my mission's accomplished.
Oh man, well said. Such an honor.
Awesome, man. Pleasure.
So great to meet you. Thanks
Yeah.
for taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure.